Presidential Tourist here. Doing something a little bit different for my channel. I'm headed to the 2017. Just want to make sure the Free Play Florida event that they're having at the DoubleTree of, I think it's, let's see, DoubleTree by Hilton, and I think it's the official SeaWorld hotel in Orlando, Florida. A friend of mine by the name of Walter Day, he is one of the special invitees there. Invited me as a guest with another person to join him at this event. I'm pretty excited. And hopefully I get a chance to have Walter on camera. It depends on his schedule. I know he's paneling with some discussion panels he's going to be part of, so I don't know if I get a chance to get him on here, but hopefully I do. Of course, I'm going to try to film as much of the event today as possible. It's actually 3 days, Friday through Sunday, the 17th to the 19th. I'm coming here on Saturday to do it, which is the 18th. I've never been to an event like this, and now you're probably asking, okay, Michael, what is Free Play Florida? Well, it's a, like I said, a 3-day convention having to do with the history and art and artistry of electronic gaming. So that's what it's about. Like I said, I've never been to one of these, but they have quite a bit of guests having to do with that, with electronic gaming. I guess they have actual games you can play there. They'll have vendors, some games will be for sale, things like that. So it's a whole boatload of stuff. And next year I'm going to try to go to this event again, maybe even go all 3 days and actually stay at the hotel. I really wanted to this time, but something came up where I couldn't actually stay at it, but hopefully next time. That'll be pretty exciting. Well, they also have an after party today from like 10 at night to like 2 in the morning or something like that. I don't think I'm going to be there for that. Well, do a lot of film today with the regular convention stuff. So, okay, we're on our way right now. And, let me show you a little. Yep, on our way. We're on I-4 right now, which from what I understand is supposed to be like one of the deadliest roads in America. I can believe it. There's a lot of cars on here, and it's really busy a lot of times. Don't look too busy now, but it usually is. Alright, I'll see you again in a minute. Well, longer for me, only a second for you. But we'll be at the event. Alright, bye.
My name's Paul Drury, and I write for a British magazine called Retro Gamer. When they asked me to host the Arcade Legends panel here in Florida, I was excited. I thought, finally, we're going to find the truth behind the arcade legend of Polybius, the video game that apparently wiped players' minds. Then they took me to one side and said, Paul, you English inbred idiot, we don't mean that kind of arcade legend. What we mean is legendary players. And I'm delighted to see I've got a whole panel of legendary players behind me. So what we're going to do, we're going to meet each one of them individually, find out what they did to become legends, find out who they did to become legends, and then I'm going to open up to the audience to ask any questions to these legendary players. But should we start in the traditional way of giving them a nice, welcoming round of applause? Here's to the arcade legends on the panel! Okay, my first arcade legend there is Mr. Todd Rogers on the far side. Now, you are called Todd Rogers, but I understand you're also known as Mr. Activision. Now, Todd, please can you tell me how you earned that title?
Well, in the Activision brochures, when the first title came out with Dragster, I submitted a high score. And by making that high score enabled me to go to one of their conventions back in 1982. Well, eventually, over a several year period, I've had their world record on every one of the Activision titles, so the Activision always had sort of stuck with me. In about 1999-2000, a referee from Twin Galaxies decided to coin the title Mr. Activision because I had the record on every Activision title.
Well, that's certainly for legendary status there. I know you're very good at scoring highly. I just wondered if you could tell us, Barbie Benton here, can you tell me what score you managed to get with Barbie?
You want the real story or just the kayfabe story? No, she was sourcing dust covers for the Atari company, and I was working for the Atari company around. So ironically, I'm wearing an Activision shirt, but it's around the same time frame I was working for Atari, and she just happened to be promoting the dust covers for, I think, one of the XL or one of the newer Atari 800 computers that they had.
Did you manage to teach her any advanced joystick techniques at all?
I think she knows how to use a joystick quite well.
Now next we have an interesting pair. On stage here to the right here we have Stephen Boyer and Stephen Kleisath. Wow, I've been practicing that. Okay, now I'm particularly interested because you're incredibly good at the game Mario Brothers. So the first question that we're all thinking, is there a correlation between being good at Mario Brothers and being called Stephen?
Coincidence.
Oh, I was hoping that was going to be something. Okay, right, I'll stop with the stupid question.
Actually, the name is spelled differently. That's right.
I see. I'm terribly sorry, okay. Now, what I'm interested in is when you're going for a world record on a game, it's often quite a solitary experience and often possibly a lonely experience. You've picked a game where you can play co-op mode. I wondered whether that was a conscious choice. It was something that you could do with someone as opposed to on your own. Either Steve.
I think it eventually became that. We had befriended each other because Stephen was a Twin Galaxies referee, so or he was verifying scores, and so he had verified a couple of my Turbo Miss Pac-Man scores, and so we sort of got to know each other that way. And then just through talking, we sort of discovered each other's love for Mario Brothers individually, and then sort of one thing led to another.
He started sending me scores from Mario Brothers, and then next thing you know, it's like, I wish we could somehow just like do a co-op.
Yeah.
And then we discovered something called Main Hub.
Main Hub, yes.
Okay. And then since he lives in Florida and I live in South Carolina, we were able to actually play it through the internet and practice.
Exactly.
So if it wasn't for Main Hub, we probably wouldn't be as good as we are.
What a lovely story. And of course, at events like this, you do come together and play literally next to each other. Well, I'm interested. Now, just joined us on the panel is Mr. David Cruz. Welcome, David. Okay, hello, nice to see you. Now, David, the picture up here is you next to a Tron machine, and I understand that you have the world record on Tron of over 14 million. Now, could you just tell us how long does it actually take to achieve a score of over 14 million on Tron?
That took nearly 24 hours to do.
24 hours. Now, what we're all thinking now is how do you manage to go to the toilet while playing Tron for 24 hours? Please, can you discuss how big your bladder is?
I think I'd rather not. No, the real answer though is in the first 4.5 to 6 hours you can take a break because you've got a tank pattern where you can park the tank and be safe. But after that pattern goes away, so it's just you versus the machine.
So basically go to the toilet a lot for the first 6 hours.
So in other words,
and then just
you get everything out of your system and then you just manage your intake and make sure you don't have to go.
These are the important things. I hope you're taking notes about. It's important stuff. I've seen you play. Now to the one British guy on the panel, Tony Temple.
Hello.
When you were growing up in Bristol in the UK, did you always dream of having your picture on a dog jacket?
Absolutely. That was the pinnacle of my video game career. Thank you so much for sharing that picture.
It's a pleasure, Tony, it's a pleasure. Perhaps you could explain to people, now people might know the game Missile Command, however you seem to have got a record on a specific setting called tournament setting. Perhaps you could explain to these good people in the audience, what does it mean to play Missile Command on tournament setting?
Yeah, so Missile Command, for those of you who are familiar, you'll be, the usual settings are you get a bonus city or a bonus life every 10,000 points. One of the challenges that you have when you're having video game world record tournaments is people could sit and play that game for days on end. So it just becomes completely impractical. So tournament settings are where you get no additional cities. So if you're familiar with Missile Command, you get 6 cities to start, but you don't get any more. Without going on and running over my time pool,
No.
it generates a completely different game. So great marathon players do not translate well to great tournament players because you can't rely on a bonus city. When your game's over, your game's over. It's it's pretty
Talking
brutal.
about absolute living legends, Walter, do you want to take the stage? You're next.
But you know, now that, I mean, is there anybody?
Walter, go and have it.
Billy's here, and if you want to have anybody else have a chance to speak, they should.
Walter, go on the stage, it's your turn. Get on the stage, it's your turn, man. You can go on the stage, it's your turn. Get on the stage, Walter.
More importantly, face knuckles here.
Found faith.
Oh, thank you. Neil, that's very kind. Thank you. Thank you. Walter, take a seat.
Okay,
Please do.
I've taken my seat.
Okay, okay. Now, Walter, I understand that in the 1970s you were involved in various businesses, and then in the early 80s you discovered this thing called video games. Perhaps you could tell me, was there a moment when you realised that these video games that were taking over the nation could be perhaps a business opportunity for your good self?
Well, I was living in Houston. I was an oil broker. That was going nowhere. So I decided that...
There is no future in oil, you're right.
Well, there was a lot of future, but not for me in my individual, the office that I was working selling what's called 6 oil, the heavy oil that's burned in like the big furnaces of like a major installation, a big building. So I started working on creating a who's who in the petroleum industry. It was called Days, Who's Who in the Petroleum Industry. And my co-worker one night said, well, I can't do this anymore. I got to go play Space Invaders. And I never had heard of Space Invaders before that moment. I said, what? So he took me to a big arcade that was there in the big highway belt around Houston. And I walked in the door, and the first thing I saw were like 8 berserk machines in a row shouting, kill the humanoid. And so, and he took me to a Space Invaders machine, and I started playing it, and I was hooked. And I fell in love with Space Invaders, and I started doing it almost, many times per week. Then Pac-Man and Centipede, and before you knew it, I was completely embroiled in the video game culture. But I went on the road as a seller of old historic newspapers. I was selling them to history teachers and as interior decor for restaurants. And while on the road, I would stop at every arcade I could. And that's where I began to develop the realization that high-level video game playing, actually is intriguing to me. Excellence in action, as portrayed in competitive video game playing. So I started becoming intrigued by people getting high scores. I started writing high scores down wherever I went. Following that, here's the highest score I ever saw in Tempest, here's the highest score I ever saw in any other game. And so I began developing a backlog of information on high scoring on video games, notes, scraps of notes, as I went around to like 100 arcades in the summer of 1981. I became in love with video game playing so much that I opened up Twin Galaxies, my arcade, as an excuse to play more and more video games.
Have you got the microphone, Bill? Now, actually, Bill, can you pass the mic? Well, you have to.
Billy doesn't need a microphone.
Drop the mic. Hello. Now, the first time I met you, Mr. Bill Mitchell,
Before we get to me, if we could finish with Walter. He will move on to further challenges, but what he does and what he enjoys, which is here, he first told me he was going to stop doing this because he was going to go on to other challenges. I do believe he'll go to other challenges, but he won't stop doing this. The first time he told me this, that he was going to stop, was 1986. He's not going anywhere, although, again, he doesn't go out and put on major events like, I mean, my sympathies for Brian and his crew here and all that they go through. He used to do things to that level. Now he adds as much color to it as he can in every way that he can, like he is here. So he'll do less, but he'll always be a part of what's happening.
Of course, it's just a very long farewell tour. The first time I met you, Bill, was in a London hotel room in 2005.
What are you trying to say?
Where you forced your hot sauce down my throat, as we can see here. So I'd just like to say that it was very nice and very memorable, and it still stings.
You're right. People believe anything they see, so that's okay.
Thank you. But of course, you've travelled the world because of video games. I just wanted to ask you, is that what opportunities do you think playing video games has given you in your life?
Well, when I was in the offices of Masaya Nakamoto at Namco, when he walked in with himself and his inner circle of marketers and programmers, what I explained to them, which is certainly true, is what I take from video games, what it brought out in me, what it forever scarred in my personality, was a competitive edge to do better and better and better and better. And it didn't matter how well I did, I wanted to do better. Not that I ever bragged, but for example, at different games at different times in the 80s, I was playing a game and I'd be playing a game at a level and there was nobody who was near me, but it didn't matter, I was always against myself. And I always did the best when I competed against myself. And it was video games that brought me to that. So the fact is, long after video games, being in business, being a father, being a husband, I'm constantly, I guess I'm hard on myself, wanting to be better and better and better and better.
You mentioned
I'm sorry, I don't answer short questions. I give you the long version.
You pass on to Richie. We've just been talking about films. Mr. Richie Knuckles, here we have a film called The King of Arcades, which amazingly seems to star you. Not everyone has a film made about them. Can you tell me how this whole project came about?
Yeah, we were doing the Kong Off, the very first one in Flemington, New Jersey, at my arcade. Something about the film The King of Kong Fistful of Quarters. When I left the theater, I actually saw it at the theater, and I said, I'm inspired. I'm going to get Steve Wiebe and Bill Mitchell together in the same room and have a Donkey Kong competition. And then I contacted him, and he said, let's do it. Contacted Steve.
And the favorite of Richie.
Yes. Contacted Steve, and Steve felt like he was going into the Lion's Den, of course, because he knew he and I were very good friends. And I convinced him, and we had a Kong Off. I took it to the next level by getting 10 other of the best Donkey Kong players around the world, and the Kong Off has become legendary. I just returned from Australia doing a Kong Off, if you can believe that. Donkey Kong afforded me a free trip to Australia. So,
And Richie came in 4th place.
yes, I was able to compete this time. I came in 4th. So, what was the question? I'm just kidding. Somebody was there who was a filmmaker, and he said, we must document what's going on. It's a shame that this is not being documented.
Let's ask you about the Congo. We've met everyone on the panel. Can I just also add Neil Hernandez, who you will be hearing more of, because if you come to the Astrac panel, you'll hear about Neil as well. Yes, Keith.
Here's your question, wait.
Okay, it is open to the audience now. I can bring the mic to you, or just want to tell her.
For Billy Mitchell, if you're so good, I was wondering if maybe you thought you could challenge me in a little competition of my own.
Only if you can say aisle 9.
Aisle 9.
Challenge of your own?
Yeah, I got a challenge for Billy
I'm not
Mitchell.
going in an ice bath with you like
Yeah,
last
it
night.
is. Together.
Oh.
Can you hear me? Can you hear my mouth? Hello?
Well, luckily he shut it off.
Oh, there we go. My mouth's back. Hello, Billy Mitchell. Would you like to have a little friendly challenge?
Friendly.
See, the trouble I face is, as I said, I never say no to an autograph or a photo, and I'm very happy and I'm flattered by it.
That doesn't answer
Mr. Keith,
anything.
it's hard to be flattered by you, so what do you have in mind?
Well, I was wondering, because I have a world record of myself as the world's lowest score in Donkey Kong Jr. I wanted to
I think
challenge.
Walter's going to do a card on you.
What's that?
Walter's going to do a card on you.
We already have a card on me. Been there, done that.
Yeah, there's a low number on it too.
I'm the unknown legend that forced his way into this world. But Billy, I was wondering if maybe we could do a wrong off. And see if we can get the word wrong off.
Sounds to me like I'm talking to the right guy.
You sure are.
Well, what's the rules on the wrong off?
The rules of the wrong off are it's Donkey Kong. We have to get the lowest score within 60 seconds without dying.
I think you're the favorite on that.
What?
You're the favorite on that, aren't you?
I sure am. You come to the right guy if you want to fail.
I'll make you a deal.
All right.
If without saying one word, not even thank you, you just hand the microphone back to Paul, then you have a deal.
All right, 2 o'clock after this panel, Billy and I.
Nice. Everybody, could I ask you guys a favor?
I can't remember exactly what time it is that we have the big mass card signing. Is it 5 o'clock?
I can find it up.
Okay, there's going to be a big mass card signing where about 30 or 40 people are going to be autographing their trading cards as gifts to everybody who's here. And here are some of the cards that will be unveiled at that time. We're going to do this real fast. This guy here, Paul Drury, right now he's discovering that he's on a trading card. And here's, stand up here, Paul, here's his award.
Have you really done that?
No, I've really done that. So, and he's going to be going with a group of other cards back to England and get ready to create. The card will be available out at the signing, okay?
Thank you.
So you've got 2 copies, one for both personalities. Okay? One for each.
Do we play
Oh, this is for your dartboard. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now, Matthew Ackerman, get up here. Here we have this. Marcy, get up here. Marcy's accepting this on behalf of her and her husband, a trading card for them recognizing them as being incredible contributors, because the whole idea behind the card set is that it's for people who contributed to the global video game culture. So thank you. So Brandon, okay. So essentially, these cards will be unveiled at the big group signing that's in like a couple hours or something. We'll,
Thank you for putting my wife's name first. She kind of keeps me in line.
Doesn't she always put her name first?
That's right.
We got the card from the hotel for our room. It actually says Mr. and Mrs. Marcy Speck. So that just tells you who wears the pants in the relationship.
Get up here, Matthew. Thank you very much. So be sure to come and get their cards. By the way, make sure you come and get all these people to sign their cards, because that's a very cool thing that's becoming popular. Now, you guys know that I'm in history. I've been in history a lot. I've studied things with yearbooks, I've studied things with old newspapers, I've studied things with business card history, and with the video game history, and yearbooks. And a close friend of mine is here who's also part of the historical process of studying history through the process of business cards. Get up here and get your award, Michael. Michael and I are both in an organization that studies history that you find in business cards, because the business cards are like a trajectory of modern business history going back in the past. And he's like an internationally known expert who actually deals with lots of business leaders and gets stuff from them, also has them sign their business cards. So he has the vast archives. So it's a cool thing you do, Michael. And you have a card out there, you get to start signing your card, and here's your award. And the one person who really should say something more than anybody is the legend himself.
Yes.
stuff happening here at this event today. I don't know if I would get a chance to play much in the way of video games. I'm just basically walking around. Kind of a bit overwhelming. There's actually so much here. I'm sure you're going to be able to hear me. Let me show you some more. I don't want you to pick